Elif works engine integration for Turkey's KAAN fighter program, and right now her biggest worry isn't the airframe, it's the engine deal sitting in Washington. Because as of mid-2026, no NATO country has actually signed a deal to buy KAAN instead of the F-35, no matter what headlines are floating around. What's real is something more interesting, a NATO member reportedly in serious talks, and a program trying to prove it doesn't need America to fly. By the end of this, you'll know exactly why that distinction matters, and why the engine question is the one nobody's fully answered yet. KAAN is Turkey's homegrown fifth-generation fighter, and it exists partly because Turkey got kicked out of the F-35 program entirely. That happened after Turkey bought Russia's S-400 air defense system, which Washington saw as a direct security risk to F-35 technology. So Turkey started building its own stealth fighter from scratch, aiming for something it fully controls. That's a massive ambition, because fifth-generation jets aren't just airframes, they're stealth coatings, sensor fusion, mission software, and years of testing all working together. Elif's team has spent years on exactly that kind of integration work, and she'll tell you the hardest part was never the shape of the plane. It was the engine. KAAN currently relies on foreign origin engine technology, not a fully indigenous power plant, and that's the detail most hype videos skip entirely. In June 2026, reporting showed the United States was actually moving forward on selling General Electric engines to Turkey for KAAN-related needs. Think about that for a second. The plane built to prove independence from America still needs an American engine to fly right now. Turkey does have a longer-term plan to build its own engine, but that's a future roadmap, not today's reality. Meanwhile, Turkey's own F-35 saga hasn't actually closed either. In July 2026, President Erdogan publicly said he expected a favorable development on Turkey's long-running F-35 situation tied to 5 specific aircraft. So the simple story of Turkey ditched the F-35 for KAAN and moved on just doesn't hold up. Ankara is still working both angles. Now, about that NATO country supposedly choosing KAAN over the F-35. Interest is real, negotiations may be real, but a signed contract naming a specific NATO buyer walking away from the F-35 hasn't been confirmed. And there's a huge difference between a memorandum of understanding, an industrial partnership, and an actual signed purchase order. Elif's seen partner countries visit the KAAN production line plenty of times. That's not the same as a check being written. So what would it actually take for a NATO country to switch? First, an official government statement, not a leaked rumor or a social media post. Second, confirmation they're a NATO member and were genuinely considering the F-35 in the first place, not just adding KAAN as a side option. Third, actual numbers, delivery dates, and whether engine or technology transfer conditions are attached to the deal. Without all of that, NATO country picks KAAN over F-35 is a headline running ahead of the paperwork. Here's why a country might genuinely lean toward KAAN anyway. Political diversification matters. Nobody wants to depend entirely on one supplier for their entire Air Force's future. Industrial participation is a real draw too. Some countries get to build parts locally, which the F-35 program doesn't always offer at the same level. Cost is another factor. An emerging aircraft can look cheaper on paper, though nobody knows KAAN's real long-term price yet. And strategic autonomy plays in too. Some governments want more control over upgrades and maintenance than the F-35 ecosystem currently allows. But here's the other side, and Elif lives this part daily. KAAN is still a developing program. Its combat capability in prototype form isn't the same as a fully proven, mature fighter. Production schedules for cutting-edge aircraft slip constantly. That's not a criticism of Turkey specifically. It's true of every fifth-generation program in history. The worldwide support and maintenance network for KAAN is basically starting from zero, while the F-35 already has that built across dozens of countries. Any buyer right now would essentially be investing in a partnership and a bet, not just purchasing a finished, combat-tested jet. Now, compare that to the F-35 itself, because it's not just an aircraft, it's a massive shared network. Interoperability, shared data, joint logistics across NATO, that's what F-35 buyers are actually paying for beyond the airframe. Its downsides are real too: cost, complex supply chains, and legitimate questions about how much control any single buyer truly has over their own jets. But claims like F-35 owners can't fly without American permission are usually exaggerated slogans, not documented technical facts. Elif's honest take, working inside this program every day, is that KAAN's real achievement isn't beating the F-35 yet. It's proving Turkey can design and build a fifth-generation fighter at all, something almost no country outside a handful of major powers has done. That alone is why foreign interest exists. Buyers aren't just weighing spec sheets, they're weighing a potential industrial relationship for the next 30 years. So the real question worth asking isn't which NATO country dumped the F-35. It's, can KAAN become a genuine alternative for countries who don't want to be fully inside the F-35 ecosystem? That's a much bigger, more interesting question, and it's one that's actually supported by what's happening right now. Elif checks the GEE engine negotiation updates most mornings before she even gets to her own desk. Because until that engine question resolves one way or another, calling KAAN fully independent is premature. Every reintroduction of a rumor about a NATO switch tends to trace back to a memorandum or a visit, not a signed contract. That doesn't mean nothing is happening. It means the story is earlier and messier than the dramatic headline suggests. Turkey's playing a long game here, indigenous engine roadmap, export ambitions, and simultaneously trying to patch things up on the F-35 side. Both tracks running at once is actually the more accurate, more fascinating version of this story. Elif's team hits a new integration milestone almost every month, and each one is a step toward genuine independence, just not there yet. If a real NATO customer does sign on the dotted line, it'll come with a country name, a number of jets, and a timeline, not just a viral headline. Until then, the honest answer is that Turkey has built something remarkable, and multiple countries are genuinely watching closely. Whether watching closely turns into signed and delivered is still an open question with real stakes attached. Elif's job for the next year is basically making sure the engine story resolves in Turkey's favor either way. Because whichever way that goes decides whether KAAN becomes a true F-35 alternative or stays a partner-dependent project a while longer. If you want to actually understand what full engine independence would take for a program like this, that's exactly what gets broken down next. Go watch that one, because the engine, not the airframe, is the real story behind every fifth-generation fighter program right now.